that would be perfect. I see we're now recording. So welcome everyone to the CHI Centers of Excellence information session. We are planning on going through some general information about the importance of centers of excellence, the program criteria specifically for the CHI COE program, the nuts and bolts of some of the best practices of the application, and then a little bit about the next steps in the process for the designation for the COEs. And then we'll have plenty of time at the end for questions and answers. So with that, I will pass. Oh, and I should introduce myself. I'm Ty Pasquini. I'm CHI's Research and Policy Director. I will pass it over to Julie Raskin, our Executive Director, to give us a little more about the importance of COEs.
Well, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, good evening, or good night, wherever you are. It's really impressive and wonderful that we've gathered today from many corners of the world to learn about our Centers of Excellence designation program. I hope everyone's doing well. This is such a difficult time for people all over the globe, and we're thinking about you and hoping that you're all doing well. And also just want to thank you for and recognize that most of the people on the call are on the front lines caring for people with hyperinsulinism during a pandemic. And we just know how much of you're having to give in order to do that, and want to thank you. So big thank you from us. So Centers of Excellence. The importance of Centers of Excellence are pretty obvious to us and probably to you, and that's why you're here. And obviously, the knowledge of hyperinsulinism or any rare disease is often scarce, and therefore it's important to recognize the facilities that have both the expertise and the resources to give those with hyperinsulinism the proper care that they need, the proper diagnosis, and to have the facilities to research and encourage research and work and collaborate. And we are not on an island alone thinking about this. There's been a movement in the rare disease community for many, many years, looking into the concept of Centers of Excellence, and many other rare disease organizations have in fact created designations. Next slide, please, Ty. So now more specifically for hyperinsulinism, we want to go over with you the importance of Centers of Excellence for hyperinsulinism care. Of course, once again, you're on this call, so we're speaking to the choir. But specifically, expert care, early diagnosis is essential to reduce the risk of brain damage and death and to ensure proper management of the disease for the best quality of life. So this is serious business, and we know that it's so important for the patients to get to places where they can get this kind of care, and it makes all the difference in the trajectory of their lives when the patients, when they're young, can get to a center and get started with the best possible care and treatment, and then have the kind of follow up and follow through that is necessary for the best quality of life. We know that currently there are amazing institutions that are providing expert care for hyperinsulinism. So it's not as if these have to be created out of thin air. We know that many of you are already providing this kind of care, yet there hasn't been recognition for the care that's being provided and the work that's going on in these centers. There isn't an existing Centers of Excellence designation. So why is this important? Well, as I just said, it's very important that the parents of babies and children and adults who are now living with this condition know where to go for multidisciplinary coordinated care treatment, ongoing medical support, and research opportunities. And we also know that it's one thing to have these resources today, but we know that the model, the Centers of Excellence model, also fosters the future, fosters a brighter future for these patients by creating a pipeline so that there's training going on at these centers, and there's succession plans, and really thinking about what the future will look like at these centers, so that there will always be physicians, nurses, and all of the ancillary important services and medical areas of medical expertise that are necessary to take care of kids with congenital hyperinsulinism, and that there will be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Next slide, please. So research is also a very important part of this, the way we think about centers of excellence. And so the Centers of Excellence model fosters hyperinsulinism research. It's important that a center works, that the center does clinical research and is not only providing care. And it also, as I said, encourages a succession plan and sharing of knowledge within and across other care and research networks. So we're, through the designation, hoping to, first of all, really recognize what's already going on in places where there's research going on at individual centers. There's collaboration with researchers from other centers and other places, perhaps not centers, but individual researchers or clinicians, and also collaborating with the patient community and working with the patient community on patient-powered research. So all of that is really important to the Centers of Excellence model. Next slide, please. So, and just to back up a little, this program didn't come out of thin air. There's been many years of work within the Research and Development Committee of the Board of Directors of Congenital Hyperinsulinism International. And after many years of working on this, there's also been back and forth with the clinicians who are experts in the field around the world. And we also have an international committee of HI specialists, clinicians, and patient representatives who have looked over and worked with the CHI staff on the Centers of Excellence designation rubric and the whole program. And this first year, our inaugural year, we had some seed money for this program from the Global Genes Foundation. And so as we've sort of outlined, the current program seeks to designate centers that address all aspects of HI care on site or through identified agreements, and additionally with a focus on research. Next slide, please. And I think I'm passing it back to you, Ty, at this point.
Yep, great. So thank you, Julie, for sort of giving us the context for which we're having the conversation and for which the program criteria and then the application come into play. So I provided here just the link to the application rubric, which is the information that is was decided upon by the committee for the elements that were necessary to be designated a multidisciplinary centers of excellence for HI. So there were 40 elements that were identified in areas including clinical experience, integrated multidisciplinary team, care collaboration, research, and quality and patient experience. So with those elements, there were 40 questions or elements and total. Of those, 27 were identified as necessary elements that all centers of excellence must have in order to be functioning at that sort of center of excellence level. There were an additional 13 elements that were optional. These were things that we hope that centers have and can either have now or can build into the future of the plans for the center. For the required elements, each of those were 5-point items. So for the 27 required elements, it's a total of 135 points that are in terms of the scoring. The optional elements range in the number of points you can earn from them from 1 to 5. So the grand total for all elements, if you got every single thing on the application, and most of the elements are yes or no. There isn't it's sort of either you have this and it meets these standards, or you don't have this. There's not a lot of interpretation or gray area. It's written in this criteria is met or this criteria isn't met. And if all elements or questions are met, you would receive 176 points. To receive the designation, you need 155 points, which is the 135 from the required elements, and then half of the points from the optional elements. So this 155 is the total number you would need. So this is a little confusing, but just this idea that there are some required elements for designation and then some optional elements. So to learn about these elements, the place to go is I provided that link in the previous slide. And this is just a screenshot of that spreadsheet for the program criteria. So you can see each element is here, and then it says in this rubric, in this Excel spreadsheet, whether or not it's a required element, and also indicates the available number of points. For each of these, there's a description and a little information about what is going to be collected through the actual application. So there's also a place where for the application question number, so you can see exactly how these elements relate to the application questions and sort of why in the application we're collecting the information and how it all charts across each other. So this program rubric is really the place if you want to understand what's required from the application and sort of the different criteria categories. This is the place to get that information for what is required for designation of a center. And this is, like I said, as available as a PDF on the website and tracks to the application, but this is going to be the only place where you can see if an element is required in terms of the designation. Then we have the application. So the application is the place where we're actually collecting all of that information, and it is available through this link, which is also available on the website. Just some quick technical notes. It's preferred to use Chrome, Firefox, or Safari browsers. So if you're having any problems and you're using Internet Explorer or another browser, you may want to switch over to one of these three. You will need to create an account, or if you have used Submittable before, you would be able to sign into your account. And because this is a media application, you can certainly save as you progress through. So we're not expecting you to sit down and do this all in one shot. You would be able to save and jump back in. So I'm going to provide just a few more things to look out for, and then show you some of the places in the application that may be just a little easier to see on the screen. So one thing I just wanted to point out, I talked before about what was required for designation. And I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that there's a difference between what's going to be required for designation versus what is required in Submittable to submit the application. So in Submittable, you may see this red asterisk on some of the items in the application. This is just telling you that you need to provide a value for any of those fields before the system will allow you to submit the application. However, not all of the required elements for designation will have that asterisk. This is because there may be multiple ways to provide the attestation for that element. And we're not requiring that you answer a specific question because we may be able to get the answer from you in another way in how we set up the application. We are trying to give you multiple ways to give us information and therefore didn't necessarily want to require certain things, but we want to make sure that you're aware that if you want to know what is required for designation, the place to look at that is the rubric and not to rely on the asterisks in the form to ensure that you've answered everything that would be needed for designation after you submit. Now, if there's anything that you answer and that is missing in your application, we will contact you. If you're confused along the way, I'll say this a few more times before we're done, but we want you to contact us if you're having any confusion or if anything is unclear. And I'll show you a little more what I mean in just a minute. A few other things to just note, and I'll show you these, like I said, in the application when we go over there. The form employs skip logic, meaning that depending on what you choose, you may see different information. This again is why we couldn't require every piece of information to be required for submission, because you may not have an answer for everything, but we're through the application going to collect everything we need. We also have, so let me just show you that. I'm gonna switch over and can you now see the application? You should see question number 5. Okay, cool. I see some head shaking. Thank you. So for example, for the skip logic, I can click if I've already provided information about my director for the center in the CV here, and you can see that this is required. And then let's say that we also have an assistant or a deputy director. So I click this and the information for an assistant and deputy director will be added to the form. Now, if I say, oh, wait, we decided that we're not calling them an assistant director, we actually are calling them a co-director, then I can click off assistant director and add co-director information as well. So that is what I mean when I'm saying the skip logic. So another example that I wanted to show you is this idea of, in some cases, I provide both a box where you can provide information or a place to upload information. So for example, you may have, in this example for inpatient care, there's a box where you can type the description of inpatient care or a co-management protocol, or you can choose a file and upload a PDF or another document, a CSV, whatever may be appropriate in that case, and upload it that way. We are not expecting you to duplicate your work. If you have it as a document already and would like to give us the information as an upload, we are not expecting you to also type in the box. It's an either or. So we just want to make sure that you know that and you're not feeling like you have to give us the information in both ways. We also wanted to point out that in many cases, you can upload multiple documents. So if you have a few different documents that you think are necessary in understanding the information, then we want you to share that with us. And there's also, in some cases, going to be some fields where after you say that you're going to upload a document, it asks for additional information. So we just want you to be aware of that. So for example, for are you involved in any active studies? If I choose file and I open a document and I put it in, once it has uploaded, I now see these new additional fields related to this document I just uploaded. So I can type in the name of the study start date, the funding source, other institutions if applicable, etc. But I have the option to upload additional files so I can add as many additional study documents that are appropriate as needed. I also wanted to show you from what I was describing earlier, this idea of that the information can be collected with skip logic. So for the criteria for FDOPA PET scans, it either needs to be available on site or via established co-management arrangement according to the rubric criteria. So if I have FDOPA PET is available on site, we're looking for proof of certificate or license from the governing body. But if I click over to it's a co-management arrangement, we need the description, and then the co-management arrangement reporting, and then the documentation. So you can see in some cases, there's just slightly different information that's collected based on the way your center is handling those different categories. So that's sort of some nuts and bolts. I'm going to take questions. So there will be, if any of that was unclear, confusing, those are just some things to look out for. But we wanted to provide a little bit about the next steps for the process. So January 15th is when the applications are due. Between now and that time, like I said, I will be available. If there are any questions, feel free to email me or to email the team. And if there's anything that you want clarified or need any help with, we are here. And we want to, we know it's a lot to collect, but we want to make this as painless as possible as we're collecting the information. The submissions will be reviewed and scored by CHI in January and February. And then we will be announcing the inaugural group of COEs on Rare Disease Day. As many of you probably know, Rare Disease Day is celebrated the last day in February every month. So we thought that that would be a nice way to acknowledge the center's commitment to HI and to the rare disease community in general. And then we're going to review the program process by surveying the community, finding out more information from everyone about how the process was, and identifying some next steps. So there will be an opportunity to sort of look at how this will evolve in the future. For the inaugural group of COEs, the designation will last for 3 years with a yearly survey just to re-up any information, just to make sure that everything is sort of tracking, but you would not be required to fill it out for 3 years. The full sort of application, it's a 3-year designation. And more information will sort of be evaluated based on how the cycle goes and the survey to the community in terms of how the program evolves from there. So with that, Julie, is there anything before we jump into questions you would like to add? Or if not, we welcome people to put any questions they have in the chat or to come off mute and to ask away. But Julie, anything you'd like to add before we do?
No, let's respond to questions.
Julie, hi, I'm Antonia. That's Samani from London. I have a question. Can I ask?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Within the application, we have a specific structure of the HI Expert Center. But some of the centers that they're already delivering HI care, they don't have the same structure. So the people, they don't have the titles that you are, including within the application, which means director, co-director, deputy director. What shall we do in this case?
Julie, do you want me to start, or do you want to?
Yeah, why don't you get it going?
Yeah, so first of all, we are very aware through the application that different countries, different centers may have different equivalencies, different information. So we are very aware and try to sort of provide an example of what the language might be, but we understand that it may be different in different places. So this is the sort of information that we may only learn through the collecting of information. So if you provide what you have and try to put it in the place that seems most appropriate, and then we are unclear or need to have a little more back and forth to understand, or if there's anything else that you think you need to provide to show that it is in fact the same or an equivalent structure or opportunity, then that is something that is definitely, because this is an inaugural process, we're still sort of working out some of what it really means to for those equivalencies. Okay. Want to add?
Yeah, I think that was a very good answer, Antonia. We, there's a balance between we very much want to accept equivalencies with different nomenclature from anywhere, and didn't want to be, we included experts from Europe so that we could in fact be sensitive to different nomenclature. We know that in some countries, pediatric endocrinologists are not the experts that take care of patients with hyperinsulinism. In some countries, it's a specialist in metabolic medicine. We know that there are some variants, and so we would just want those sorts of variants to be shared in the application. There was the question about a co-directors or a director and assistant or a director and an assistant director. That was something that the committee felt was important for succession and for just sort of the overall structure of the center. But again, just I think apply and share your structure.
I will also add that we hope that this is also an opportunity to formalize potentially, if it makes sense for the evolution of the centers, some of that structure within the broader hospital. So if, it could be the type of thing where we're hoping that it may help get some recognition from some of the leaders in some of the places where this great work is happening. So that is part of it as well. We have a few, and there is another section in the leadership structure part. So that may be another place to provide that information. In addition to deputy director, co-director, there's other leadership later down the form.
And the last question for me, if you have more than one members in one specific role, for example, if you have 3 CNSs and not only one, or if you have assistant director, many endocrinologists instead of only one, how shall we include? I mean, because it gives you the option only for one assistant director, only for one CNS. What shall we do?
So one of the things you'll see is that we're looking for a little more information for sort of a top level leadership group. And then we want the staff list for everyone else. So we're not expecting you to upload the CVs for every person who you work with. We know some of the groups can be quite large. So I suggest sort of putting my professor hat back on, that you read through the entire application before you even get started, because we do have a place where you can just upload your staff list or provide a list of your staff, and you'll see that we don't need the detailed information for every individual person, and that you can just provide a link if you have all of your staff listed on your website, or if you have a staff list of everyone who's associated with the center. So if you have 3 CNAs that work on your team, we don't necessarily need the CV for each one of those members. We just want to make sure that sort of that core group and some of those core members is where we collect additional information. And then for some of the members, for example, your radiologist and the geneticist who may be interpreting the results that are very critical to that high level of care, we may be asking for specific information for CVs and that sort of thing for those members. But we don't necessarily need the detailed information for each team member. So that's why it's sort of, I would recommend sort of reading it all, taking it all in, and then sort of making decisions at that point about sort of where you may plug in information. And then we're very open to you uploading additional documents if there's anything that you feel like is relevant, but that's how I would suggest handling that.
Great, thank you.
Julie, I see there's a few questions in the chat. And so just to, I'll do an easy one quick, and then we'll jump in to some of the others. So the structure of the hospital doesn't need to be explained in the program. I was more just saying that the structure of the hospital may inform how the center is organized. So that could be part of why there's sort of differences. And that's something that we're just going to be learning, we assume, through this process. So if there's anything that's sort of different that informs why your center is structured that way, you may want to share that with us, but it's not information that we are asking for or need. It's more just if there's something unique to the way the center is situated in the hospital that may need that clarification. So just to clarify that. Julie, do you want to?
I think that there's some questions that have to do with scoring. So maybe for these particular questions, it's important to go to the rubric, if you want to put the rubric up, and show which are required and which are not required. And there might be a little bit of confusion about scoring.
Sorry. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen anymore, am I? So let me get out of the, and one thing we will say is we were very clear this year that this is an inaugural program, and we wanted, Jen, if you could give me sharing capability again. This is an inaugural program, and we're looking at this point, sort of this very, the multidisciplinary sort of one-stop shop model for centers of excellence. In the future, there may be additional levels that are needed. There may be additional designations that are needed to capture different aspects of care. The sort of evolution of the program that we're in currently is this, everything is available, everything can be done in the center, and that it all is in one place. And part of what we'll be learning through this review process that we do after the first inaugural class is to determine if there are additional designations or additional components that may be different from this all-inclusive, multidisciplinary, fully formed center. So that's something that I think I would just want to say to respond to some of the comments in the chat. And actually, since this is up, Julie, I've now lost the question. So
okay, the first question was about the number of patients who are treated at the center. So yeah, okay. So it was the clinical experience one. So the question was, if a center has examined 50 HI patients in the last calendar year and a minimum of 100 total patients since the center was founded. And the question is that required or not?
No, so it is not required. And so that is it is required to share the number of patients you have treated. So you earn the 5 points as a required element if you have provided the number of patients you have treated, but it is not required to hit that 50 patient mark. So that is those 4 points would count towards the optional points, the additional points, but it is not required on that level.
Great. And then there's a question about pancreatectomies, the number of pancreatectomies performed. So let's look at that.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm just going to, don't remember the exact number.
You are asking details for the last 5 years. How many near total pancreatectomies? How many focal pancreatectomies? How many diffuse HI treated with? So you're asking numbers of the different types of pancreatic surgeries over the last 5 years. But over the last 5 years, we are trying even the diffuse disease to manage medically, if possible. And we are trying to avoid near total pancreatectomy if possible. And I think that was the question in the chat group. And I agree.
And that's also not a required. That is not a required. Those points are not required. So, but overall experience in pancreatectomies it's important for us for us to collect that. And for those who are, we know that there is a significant portion of patients who are having surgery for focal hyperinsulinism, and that's occurring in centers, that's a widespread practice at leading centers. So that's why the committee put it in and did not make it required, because it was known that there are different approaches to surgery.
Hello, Julie.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Vandana Jain from New Delhi. So
Hello.
basically, I would ask these questions. Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. So actually, in the rubric, somehow it's not very clear to me that what are the essential requirements and what are the optional ones. So can you just help me with that?
Yes, there's a column.
Sure. Yep, so this second to last column in the rubric, the ones that are required are, there's a yes, and then the ones that are optional are no.
Okay.
In most cases as well, the required are going to be 5-point elements, and the other elements are less than 5. In almost all cases, that's going to be something you can see.
Yeah. Okay. And I had one more question that, actually I missed out on the initial part of Julie's presentation. So basically, what does the institution gain from the designation of a center of excellence?
So that's a really good question. And we can make some projections about what it would gain, but we can't tell you for sure. This designation, this is a designation from a patient advocacy organization. So it will have different meanings in different places. To the patients who consider Congenital Hyperinsulinism International to be a source of information about care for hyperinsulinism, it will be a source of information for them about the qualifications, the staffing, and the general care provided from the perspective of Congenital Hyperinsulinism International. So it's it's a seal of it's sort of a seal of approval for a center of excellence from the patient advocacy organization. So that's basically what it is.
Right. So anything else? Because as it is like the institution where I work in New Delhi, it's a premier medical institution, like one of the most prestigious academic institutions in India. So otherwise also people who need any sort of consultation for any rare disorder, they would usually visit us. So besides the seal of approval, which you rightly mentioned, it's a good thing. But is there anything else, like for example, more some sort of research funding or more international collaborations occurring, or anything else which would be like of benefit to us?
Sure. So that's a really good question. And as you may know, we're also developing the Collaborative Research Network and hoping that that will be of interest to clinicians and researchers also around the world at leading academic institutions. So it's not a requirement to apply for this and to have this designation to participate in any future activities of the Collaborative Research Network and of CHI. But if you think that your institution would, in fact, has the criteria to receive this designation, as you go through the rubric, and if you think it does, I think it's a good thing for you. In the United States, we have some excellent medical institutions where people might go for rare treatment, but for one reason or another, may not specialize in hyperinsulinism care, whereas other leading excellent institutions do. So it's really a designation specifically for hyperinsulinism care. And we do in fact have many people from India who contact us, who visit our website, who are in our patient forum. So, you know, I would recommend that when you're ready, you apply, but it doesn't have to be this year. You know, it's obviously completely voluntary and doesn't exclude you at all from participating in our other activities.
And that's one of the
Okay.
things we'll be
Thank
looking
you.
at in the follow-up is the sort of what, how will we be collaborating in some of the other international efforts that are going on with centers of excellence. These are all part of things that will fall under the heading of the CRN and under the work that she is continuing to do moving forward. Sebastian, I know you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I've got two questions. First is, if I understand the criteria right, then you said that there's only the DOPA pad where a co-management agreement is, so to say, eligible for the certification. So regarding surgery, surgery, pathology, and all these things, it's not allowed to offer this as a co-management agreement with another institution. Is that right? And the second question is, could you outline a little bit how the evaluation or review process is done? So who's going to be in the committee? Who's going to evaluate the documents?
Sure. So just to make sure I understood your first part of the question, were you asking for if surgery would be something that we would consider for a co-management agreement? Is that correct?
The FDOPA, yeah.
Wait, no. FDOPA, we do say that it can be. I think Sebastian was asking if surgery could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, related to surgery is pathology, of course. So it will happen in the same center as the surgery will be performed.
Yeah, so pathology, we do specifically say that it can be done through a institutional partnership agreement. We did not specify the surgery as
I think we did.
not through co-management. Pathology, yes. Surgery, we didn't. And that is, I'll share my screen again. But pathology, absolutely. And then surgery, it hadn't been discussed. Oh, sorry. But I think that that is something that, again, there were things that we knew we would learn through this process, that this is sort of a great example of if the surgeon is, you know, has this documented experience, that would be something that would be evaluated and that decision would be made. We do have that the dedicated staff includes a surgeon, but again, if it's part of the primary team that's working in collaboration with the other key members of the team, if that individual has sort of that connection and collaboration with the other key members, then I believe we would see that as meeting the meeting that criteria. And so, Julie, if I think that this, so yeah, as long as they're working in that primary team to make the treatment plans, that would be the requirement. That it's, so that is the spirit of that of that option. So through an agreement would meet that as long as they're part of that team. Julie, do you want to clarify what I'm saying?
Yeah. In fact, we thought about Germany when we considered that issue. So if there is an agreement between institutions that are working together with surgery in one center, that is not an impediment to, that's considered part of one team. If your center of excellence includes 2 institutions, that is acceptable.
And then in terms of the review process, the purpose of writing some of this the way it is for this inaugural group is that it should be pretty clear in most cases if this is met or not met. We will be scoring with the chief staff and other members of the board. And then if there are any areas where it is not clear if something is met, that is when we have a group that we will assemble and look at whether or not it is meeting the criteria based on whether it is unclear. But we do think that because of the way most of this is written, it should be pretty identifiable. And as we said, we will give centers an opportunity. If there's something we're not clear about, we will go back and ask for clarification. And sort of, we see this as an inaugural process, as a learning process. And so there will be opportunities to have a dialogue through it with the centers as the process is going forward. Is there anything you want to add, Julie?
There was a question, Sebastian, you had a question about who would be doing the scoring. So is it clear to you, Sebastian? He's on mute, or he's not here.
He's here, but he's mute.
Okay.
But I have an additional question to that point. So you would accept a surgery in another center without all the other entities present caring for the children during surgery and all the time around as acceptable. Is that correct? So in a time while the children get surgery, there would be no other specialists and a surgeon.
There has to be on-site, obviously, endocrine care and all of the expertise.
Dedicated staff. Dedicated staff.
Yes, you need to specify that because this is a big difference for the children. In your questions, you should specify that because it makes a big difference.
Well, and it cannot be, it must be the dedicated staff as part of it. And then the surgery, who's performing the surgery, it needs to be, they have to have this, this criteria as well. And then the extended team must have the additional specialties. So thank you. Yes, we agree. Okay.
I have a question. This is Lauren calling in from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. When you're defining the research studies, can you just give a quick overview of what exactly you mean by active?
Sure.
So would that be, currently enrolling, analyzing data, recruiting, about to recruit? Just what, if you could better define that for us.
Yeah, that's a great clarification. So definitely enrolling, and I would say if you've been identified as a center and enrollment will be happening, then like within the next few months, I would say that would be current. Analyzing data. Analyzing data, I would say at that point, if you are no longer collecting information and you are, it would count as part of, there's sort of a few different ones. There's ones that are We ask for information about what is current and then also what you have done in the past few years. So I would say if you are no longer collecting data, you are in the analyzing data phase, I would count that as the it has finished. And you can count that in that category. But that is a level of specificity that I don't know, Julie, that we discussed.
Can you put those up for us?
Yeah, I thought I had found it, but I started talking, so let me find the exact spot. So and we did sort of, there's a few different types of research that, so this first one, current research, basic science.
So so for that, I would say if you're in any stage of research for that one, I think that any aspect of the research that you're working on, you're currently working on research.
Yeah.
For 26. For 26.
Yeah. So we can say analyze as well. Oh, and so
and for 27. Oh.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so 27, the HI Center has participated in an HI relevant clinical trial in the previous year.
Yeah, that's the clinical trials. So that is the, so the 26 is the any basic science, any investigator-led studies, any information from the sort of PI generated, and then the 27 is specific to clinical trials, and that would be in the previous 5 years. So that if you're have been identified and are about to start recruitment for a new clinical trial, that would also count towards that. And if you aren't involved in a clinical trial, then we have options for sort of showing in HI specific clinical trials, and there's information in 27 to collect that as well. Megan had her hand up.
Yes, thanks. Lauren did ask the one question that I had on my list. So Lauren, are you okay with those answers? Does that make it a little more clear?
Yep, that is great.
Okay. So I'll knock off that question. For the HI definition, what do you consider unique?
For the,
how do you categorize unique? So that's number 2, the HI definition.
For the HI definition?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm understanding what you mean. For the...
Which question, Megan?
Number 2.
Oh. Oh, unique. So we mean individual patients. So if they so like one person, like Ty came, counts as one. That's a unique patient. So and so it's the number of people, not the number of visits. So if I came 30 times, I still only count once.
Gotcha. And so just HI, or could it be other hypoglycemia patients?
Here, it's hyperinsulinism.
Okay.
Yeah. And or hyperinsulinism suspected if there's not a known genetics type, but it's hyperinsulinism suspected, I believe that would also, just so we're clear, sort of coming out of our conversation this past weekend, that would count as well. Right, Julie?
Yes, anybody that the center considers to have hyperinsulinism.
Yeah. But individual patients, not visits, is the,
okay.
But in terms of what is HI we do mean HI patients or suspected HI patients if even if genetics are unclear, if it's suspected that HI, then that would be the only squishy.
Yeah, and then
Well, there's I think that Meg,
sorry.
and you bring up a good point there, a really, really good point that I don't believe we discussed as a committee. So yes, anybody who the center considers as having HI clinically, irrespective of a genetic, of a genetic diagnosis, we all know that about 50% of patients with hyperinsulinism do not have a known genetic cause. So we're absolutely talking about those patients. Another level that you may be talking about here is those who come to the center seeking treatment, thinking perhaps, or it's suspected that they have hyperinsulinism, and then they are found to have another cause of hypoglycemia that isn't hyperinsulinism. So I think is that your question, Megan?
Correct. Yeah, because we're working on
so that's really interesting, and I don't think that the committee considered that question, but I think it's an important consideration. Perhaps, Ty, is there room for a note for this question?
Yeah, and just so we're clear, I mean, I think that there's certainly a room for note. The issue will just be depending on sort of where you are in the process. If I add something in there, you may not see it. So if there's any additional information you would like us to know, I believe I have a general question at the end for anything else you want us to know, or feel free to just email it. Once you hit submit, you can say, send me an addendum of additional information you want us to think about or consider for any question. That goes sort of for the entire thing. And that is something, it actually goes back, I think, to Sebastian's clarification here as well, where if the application was put together in a way that it's meant to be, like I said, sort of cut and dry to sort of see where things fall. But as we knew there would be some ambiguity with some of this, and as we sort of moved through with the community, so the original concept was that the CHI staff and board members would be able to score and review, but if there was anything that was outside of that area where it was clear, that then the expert panel of sort of the committee or other individual experts could be called upon to provide an expert opinion, sort of with a blinded review at that point. So any clarification that was needed, we wouldn't just, that we would assemble the right people, but we're hoping that there's, that most of it will be able to be scored by that sort of internal group.
Yeah, and then I just noticed that it says active patient who have been seen, contacted, or consulted with. So consulted with is makes our volume even higher because they might not have actively come to CHOP, but we do sort of track most of the calls and the consultations that we provide. Now, is that to be included for that number? Okay.
It says it.
So, okay.
Yes.
Sorry, a few questions for number 18. It doesn't seem like we're able to supply the direct IRB approval or IND approval letter, but is it okay if we just include a letter from our radiologist with her signature and with the information requested?
Yeah, for the FDOPA?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say I would have to look at that with I would want to look at that with the rest of the team, but I believe that's a good example of something that we might that would consider an equivalent. But again,
okay. And then one more, sorry, for publications, if I just upload all of the publications over the past 3 years onto just one document, it then prompts me to individually list each one. Do I have to do that, or does that document suffice?
You can just, it's not required to give us that additional metadata. So I will say that part of what we're trying to do in collecting that information is that we're trying to, as part of the CRN generally, expand our library of publications and of information that's available, that we can sort of go back to the authors and get permission to do patient-friendly summaries that we can have as part of sort of the CHI library of information we're collecting. So some of this is serving some of the dual purposes of other organizational goals for just making sure we have the thought leaders who have created those documents and those publications. So, but you can give it to us in the form that you have, and we'll be happy to take that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We are over our time at noon, but I'm happy to stay on and answer any additional questions. Or as I've said before, we will be, available to continue to answer questions via email, and however else you would like to get in touch with us. If you need a follow-up phone call, we are, like we said, this is our inaugural class, so we're really excited to see how the program moves forward, and appreciate the feedback that you all have, and we'll go from there. So thank you. Julie, any final thoughts?
Just that, there were really, really good questions, and if we will provide further clarification where necessary for the questions that you asked today.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a nice rest of your day.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.